So I've noticed that usually after I have a big argument with Destiny, him and his community latch, and this is my perception, him and his community latch on to one or two very specific misinterpretations of the things that I said, and they meme it into oblivion. The last time they did it with the submitting to the mob take, which unfortunately repeated engagements with Destiny's community has led me to believe they still don't know what I was saying. And I don't know why, because I think I made it clear, but yeah. The meme that came out of this one was that Vaush is okay with lying if it suits his political agenda. That's the thing. There's like a half dozen subreddit posts in his community saying exactly that, which is interesting for a couple of reasons that I'm about to get to. Normally, I don't think it's worthwhile to address stuff like this because I find that most of the communities that dislike me online are uncharitable, which means that even if you present them information that I think like reasonably leads to a given point, they don't accept it because they don't like you. Or at least that's a kind of uncharitability. This is the way I feel about tankies and the woke scolds and, you know, I haven't put much effort into clearing up the shit Nazis believe about me either. Because you think they'd believe me? If I gave them a rational explanation for any of the crazy shit they say about me? No. And unfortunately, I'm getting the, maybe not the exact same, but a comparable type of uncharitability from some elements of Destiny's community. So I want to address it, okay? So with regards to the accusation, there are like half a dozen Reddit threads. There are people in the Twitter threads memeing about this, saying that I'm okay with lying if it suits my political agenda. One of those threads I actually posted to Twitter. The title of it was something like, Vaush is as dangerous as Trump, or no, it was like, Vaush's approach to information is as dangerous as Trump. Here, I'll find the exact title, because if I misremember it, they'll accuse me of lying. Here it is. I don't think people realize how dangerous Vaush's position really is. It's comparable to the dangers of Trump. And because this is a supremely funny title, I posted it to Twitter. And funnily enough, they actually said that me posting the title of this Reddit post was misinformation because I didn't also post the content of the post. Which, if you take it to its logical conclusion, means that anytime you post the title of something without including the entirety of its contents, you're lying. In fact, I think if you go to this post now, the majority of the comments are about saying that I proved his point. Very Trumpian of me to post a screenshot of a title, which I guess means anytime you post that title of Tucker Carlson's conversation with Ian Miles Chong, where it says like, gamer man afraid of women, or that Styx Hexenhammer title, Why Feminism is Why I Can't Date Women, part 2 out of 17 or something, that's actually misinformation. Anytime you ever show any piece of information without showing every and all qualifying and characterizing piece of information associated with it, it's Trumpian. I get annoyed by stuff like this because when you're dealing with an uncharitable community, it really doesn't matter how you handle things because misinformation exists in a spectrum. If you really want to, I mean really want to, you could accuse every human being on Earth of engaging in misinformation to some extent or another. The easiest one you can do is accuse them of flatly, openly lying, which you can normally catch people in and I don't think is acceptable in any case. But then there are half-truths, and then there are sort of not half-truths, but you're only providing enough information to imply X or Y. And if you lean in on it hard enough, everybody engages in this behavior to some extent. CGP Grey is a really great YouTuber. You know, CGP Grey? They did all the videos on different types of voting systems. However, there are some elements of CGP's Grey's videos that are a little bit misrepresentative. The monarchy video is an example where they left out certain chunks of information that Sean covered in one of his videos because CGP and Sean both have an ideological bias. Now, depending on how charitable I wanted to be to CGP Grey, I could say that he was deliberately lying, that he is a peddler of misinformation, and that he should be deplatformed off the internet. but frankly, I think that'd be a little ridiculous. The problem that I have with stuff like this is that the degree of uncharitability that's assigned to me from Destiny's community is so severe that I genuinely don't know if anything I'm ever going to say is going to, like, register. To be clear, this is a community supervised by Destiny, a guy who is obsessed with logical consistency, who impugned me for not controlling my community enough when he got departnered off of Twitch because a couple people in my community, including my partner and a mod of mine, made comments about reporting him for it, except my partner made the comment in a live stream chat, which means that it was on screen in view for about 2 seconds, and the mod's comment got deleted the moment that I noticed it. Meanwhile, when somebody in Destiny's community says, and this was right after, by the way, so are the exploits for Vaush's site fixed yet, or still open for abuse? And Destiny says, ooh, if you know any, you should post and or abuse them, lamau. No clue how many fixed exploits are public or not. Go get 'em, champ. So, to my knowledge, he never owned up to this, or, like, apologized. I think at one point somebody brought him up, and he said it was a meme, which, like, okay. Conveniently, after the departnering, I think Destiny entered his nihilist arc, where he said he didn't care about being, like, honest anymore, or he didn't care about, like, being consistent or something like that. Anyway, like, this is where I'm getting criticism from, okay? Like, honestly. And if my community was on the fucking patrol trying to find criticisms or inconsistencies about a person's position, like for Destiny, you'd be able to find some, because everyone engages in this stuff. So I want to explain the reason why Destiny's community says that I'm okay with lying for political gain, and then I want to explain why that's wrong, and unironically, why them saying that is misinformation. Oh, Destiny's claim was that he was trying to tell chat to report it? Oh, I'm saying, so he said that if you find exploits in the site, you should post and or abuse them. He was trying to do bug fix. Okay, I gotcha. Of course, naturally, you know? How could you expect anything else? What other possible outcome could there be to that? By the way, I've never lied like that. You can trawl through my whole fucking history. I've never lied as shamelessly and as deliberately and as blatantly as that. And that's just one example. But maybe it's uncharitable of me to assume that. In the debate that I had with Destiny, I said at one point, after he said that the left was engaging in misinformation by saying Breonna Taylor died in her sleep, I said something along the lines of, who cares? There was conversation surrounding that. I don't remember all the specifics. I have a really bad memory. But at some point in that conversation, I think I must have given him and other people the impression that I don't care about lies if the lies suit my political agenda, which is not true. If you follow any of my content, you will know that I have always been fastidious about honesty. If you know, I have corrected you guys on where Breonna Taylor died. If you know, in the debate with Destiny itself, I repeatedly said that I really liked Unlearning Economics video because it pointed out the misinformation in Philosophy Tube's video and corrected it. So in the conversation that I had itself, I was adamant about the necessity of qualifying and clarifying and correcting misinformation. And if you look back through the history of my channel, I think I've said this multiple times, in a utilitarian sense, I think there are severe consequences to encouraging misinformation. See, on a very surface level, if it's like if you tell a lie and there are good outcomes, that's good, right? Well, there's a problem with that. No system lives on its lies forever, and eventually, everyone comes to account. Even if the left were somehow able to, like, sweep national offices off of disinformation, I mean, to just take it from A to Z. Even if we were able to win off of that, we won off lies. And that may be great in the short term, but in the long term, we have destroyed our ability to meaningfully criticize ourselves, because the followers of those lies, the people who believe in them, probably don't know their lies. That's generally how it goes with these political movements, right? The people on top lie and the people on bottom obey those lies. Which means that the people on the bottom, now having been fed misinformation, no longer have the ability to accurately address, clarify, correct, or criticize any of the political positions that they support. And that has devastating long-term consequences. Somebody here says, Vaush, you literally said last stream you wanted more grifters on the left. Yes, because I don't care if a person is sincere about their belief in leftism when they push it. Being a grifter doesn't necessarily mean you're lying about the claims you make. It means you're being dishonest about what you believe. If a grifter can be insincere while pushing nothing but truthful information. So, and I clarified that, I think, in that context. If you're a grifter, like, you can push nothing but truthful information, but internally, you can think like, I don't give a fuck about leftism. I don't give a fuck about politics. I don't care. I'm just here for the money. Oh, still bad optics, though? There's grifting on every side of the political aisle. If you think about, say, for example, Candace Owens and all of the good that she has done for pushing conservatism, I say good here in the with the largest possible quotation marks. My fingers can't get big enough, you know. Then, to put it frankly, I just don't care about sincerity. I care about truth. Does that make sense? I hope you understand that there's a difference between those two things. Grifting doesn't mean you're lying about the things you're saying. It just means that your intentions aren't sincere. I would prefer we were all sincere in our advocacy for leftism. But if somebody just wants to make money off of it, and in the process of making money, they push a lot of people towards the left, okay, as long as they're honest and good, they do good there. But that's not the same as thinking it's okay to lie for political gain. Those are two completely separate claims. You can criticize me for my ambivalence towards grifting. You can, that's fine, but that isn't the same claim as I'm okay with lying to suit a political agenda. Now, as I said, right now, there are a bunch of threads on Destiny subreddit saying that I'm okay with lying, which again, I don't think is a charitable read. But I'm going to explain my position on this in its totality, okay? So I just said, I don't think that lying for a political gain is good. Anybody who's watched me for any length of time knows that. But this is the way uncharitability works. You can have years and years of a consistent position, and then people will still very deliberately and uncharitably misinterpret one statement that you make in a yelly debate live stream, and then run with that. And they're like, actually, everything that Vaush has said before and everything that he will say after, those are all lies. This one instance, this one interpretation, this right here, that's actually what he believes. He finally let it slip. You hold people to that standard, you can get anybody on anything, okay? Anybody on anything. But here's my position. Here's the position that was being misinterpreted. And I want to see if you guys agree with it, okay? Misinformation exists on a spectrum. The farther towards truth you go, the more subjective the qualification for misinformation gets. Sometimes misinformation is really obvious, like an open lie. Pretty much every conservative channel engages in flagrant and open and completely objective misinformation. And most people sometimes do as well, including me and including Destiny. It's not good, but it's a thing that happens. But even the most rigorous channels, especially from live streamers who don't have the opportunity of editing everything they say, will engage in misinformation to some extent. Sometimes it's lying. Sometimes it's posting a half-truth. Sometimes it's uncharitable representation of another person's position. I could accuse Destiny of that plenty. That's the feeling that I get. I think all of those fall under the blanket umbrella of misinformation. And my argument is that because everybody engages in it to some extent or another, and I mean everyone. I'm sure, by the way, that if I was an astronomer or a biologist or an astrophysicist, I would be able to find misinformation on in a Kurzgesagt video. You know Kurzgesagt, the really cute animated videos about science and tech and stuff like that, and like sociology and anthropology. If I was educated enough, and I'm not, by the way, those aren't any of my fields. If I was, I could probably find a few points of misinformation. Everything, you know? Fuck, man. Even academic studies have replication errors and methodology problems that I was trained in my classes to learn how to analyze. If you get right down to it, even the most the most basic factual bedrock of the types of arguments that we make, even those can be susceptible to misinformation. So yeah, all information is infinitely complex. There's no such thing as perfect knowledge. True, and even more importantly, charitability and fair interpretation are also something you have to look out for, because as a public figure, what matters isn't just what you say, it's how people interpret it. So even if you say everything truthful and you say nothing but the truth and you don't leave out anything, the tone with which you say truthful things can still convey misinformation to an audience. This is absolutely a fact. Like, nobody in linguistics would disagree with me on that. So, well, they might not like the term misinformation, which I'm using in a very blanket way, but yeah. We're not calculators. There's just more nuance to language. That, like, there's too much for us to be perfect in all respects. So, oh yeah, 1350 is a good example. The 1350 phrase is technically correct. Well, the numbers aren't exactly that, but it's technically correct. But it's used in wildly dishonest ways all the time. And you guys know that because I've talked about that. So, what do I think should be done about this? This is my position. Because I'm a utilitarian, I think that you should respond to misinformation in a way which is proportionate to the amount and severity of that misinformation. That's my position. Which is why, in that debate, I said, who cares, with response to the 500,000 like tweet saying Breonna Taylor died in her bed. Because that's an example of a piece of misinformation, which is, I'm going to guess, not malicious. I doubt the person tweeting that actually knew she died in the hallway and then said in the bed. I imagine, like most people, that she just has a simplified and uninformed version of the series of events in her head. And so did the people who liked it. I don't think this is like some malicious thing. Not only was it not malicious, I imagine, but it also was fairly trivial compared to the truth of the matter. She dies here, she dies there. We're not misrepresenting some critical element like she drew a gun and fired at the cops in the door frame, or she charged them, or something like that. We're not like, it is misinformation, but I would consider it relatively trivial compared to, say, conservative channels. Now, my concern here is that selectively choosing who to go after for misinformation and doing so in a way which is disproportionate can actually be a form of misinformation in and of itself. Destiny himself said this about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. Julian Assange released a bunch of negative information about the DNC, and Destiny pointed out correctly that while transparency is good, selective transparency that only reveals information on one of the two major political parties while leaving the other one untouched, that's not transparency. That's misinformation. Because you're giving the people who get that information the impression that only the DNC has dirt on it and that the RNC doesn't have anything within it worth looking at. And I think Julian Assange said something like, they're so dumb, everyone can see what's wrong with them. But he criticized Julian Assange for that. Yeah, it's a lie by omission in a respect. It's a bias that incurs a certain set of outcomes. Destiny knows this. So, since Destiny knows this, I think it would logically follow that one is of the opinion that selectively targeting certain groups or certain individuals for misinformation in a way which is disproportionate might itself convey misinformation, which is why I'm so critical of Destiny for saying the level of misinformation on the left and the right is equal. That is an insane position. I want to be perfectly clear about this. That's a delusional position. When Destiny says the amount of misinformation on the online left and the online right is equivalent, or even comparable, that is misinformation. That is I don't know if he's deliberately lying, but that is wrong. But in the pursuit of that belief, he seems more interested in attacking or impugning Booksmart's got Destiny to walk that back yesterday. Okay, that's nice. I'm happy to hear that, because that is an absolutely ridiculous position. So since if he's walked that back, then I won't impugn that. I still think that was a ridiculous thing to ever say at any point. It's by any standard, by any metric, you can objectively disprove that. Any conservative channel versus even Ben Shapiro is one of the more level-headed conservative channels. Even that, it's just relentless, the misinformation. I think you should respond to misinformation in a way which is proportional to the severity of the misinformation. So since everybody engages in misinformation to some extent, if I think the misinformation is relatively trivial, relatively insubstantial, and relatively harmless, I won't go as hard against it as information or misinformation which I find to be incredibly harmful or incredibly destructive. Like COVID denialism, for example, which is a staple amongst conservative channels. I think these are incomparable in this respect. And this is where I bring it all together. Thank you for following me up to this point. Much in the same way that Julian Assange used selective transparency to convey an inaccurate picture of the political landscape in America, selective and disproportionate response to misinformation also contributes to an inaccurate understanding of the online political landscape. Like calling Big Joel a subhuman degenerate piece of shit for talking about the debate that he had with Destiny on Twitter afterwards. He claimed that Big Joel misrepresented his position, but for the life of me, when I looked at that Twitter thread, it seemed like it was accurate, because Destiny did say that you could kill a person for trying to steal your sandwich. Or saying that PhilosophyTube is a liar whose channel should be deleted. If that's a position you hold about PhilosophyTube, I would think that Destiny probably engages in more misinformation than PhilosophyTube. Or I should say, since that's a little bit inaccurate, I would say not more disinformation, because that's difficult to quantify. I would say the consequences of the misinformation from Destiny can be far worse, because I didn't see anything from PhilosophyTube as stupid as the online left and the online right are equally dishonest. I didn't see it. I haven't seen anything from Abigail that comes in that ballpark. But if he walked that back, then that's good. I won't hold to that. That's my concern. And if you're being selective and disproportionate with how you choose to impugn other people for being dishonest, in reality, that gives you essentially the ability to manufacture whatever narrative you want to your audience, because you're not contextualizing the misinformation everyone engages in. He talked to Kraut just the other day. Y'all remember my convo with Kraut? Kraut's videos have been widely criticized by a number of people. Bad history posts have picked it apart. And then there are the old videos that he deleted, which were, but still defends to this day in some respects. But he'll have him on, We all do this stuff. I just want us to respond proportionately. So in summary, everybody engages in misinformation, and it should be responded to in a way which maximizes the utility that we get from criticizing that misinformation. Little petty bits of misinformation should still be corrected, but overblowing it and acting as though those pieces of misinformation are equivalent to other types which are worse or more severe is itself tantamount to misinformation. I don't know why I bothered to say any of this shit, because I genuinely think that Destiny's community is at a point where it's not charitable enough to be able to register anything that I'm saying. An example of it is this, and this is exactly what I mean. Exactly what I mean. This is a post from Destiny's subreddit. If you guys remember, just a couple of days ago, I went over Blair White's political compass test. And in Blair White's political compass test, she had a question about whether one race is superior to another. And when I paused at that moment, I said, Shapiro and Michael Knowles both struggled with this one, both took some time with this one. And this person in Destiny's community dug up the Ben Shapiro political compass video from March of 2020. And it turns out that he didn't struggle with that question. He just struggled with a bunch of other ones. But in the Michael Knowles one, I was correct. He did struggle with it. Here are some of the posts from that thread. I find the biggest difference between somebody like Vaush and somebody like Destiny is Destiny doesn't need to lie when making a point against a right-winger, as Vaush did here last night. A lie for forgetting which questions out of 60 questions from March 2020 in a video that I did that Shapiro struggled with. A lie. Now, to be fair, there are posts here which are calling this out and saying, like, he probably just forgot, which, yeah, no shit. Obviously. But there are other ones, too, which are... Oof. I never watched the Shapiro video on this and just assumed Vaush was right, but holy crap. I even went to the video to make sure you didn't cut him off before the deliberations, and nope, immediately after your clip ends, he moves on to the next question. This was cringe. He answered it even faster than Blair White did. And we have another one saying that, that I probably just forgot. Holy shit, Lamau. Then somebody here is saying that I and Ben Shapiro have the same answers to the political compass test. Don't worry, there's no problem with misinformation in the online left, smiley face. I'd normally be charitable to this because Knowles actually did do that, but the idea Shapiro would equivocate on that very easy question should immediately raise red flags. He's very obviously not an out racist. I don't know where this person's getting the idea that Ben Shapiro isn't an out racist is. With Ben Shapiro, rap isn't music. Ben Shapiro, pull your pants up, don't wear them around your ankles. I don't know. I mean, he has started spamming 1350 in his videos, I guess, but yeah. Now, a lot of the people in this thread are saying that this was like an act of misremembering, but there were people who agreed with the major post, or people who upvoted it. And like those people, like, man, how do you reach people like that, you know? Ben Shapiro has dropped 1350 before. Oh, I'm sure at some point. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, Arabs like to live in open sewage. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Vaush, Big Joel was disingenuous. Destiny didn't say he'd kill somebody for stealing a sandwich. They were specifically discussing extreme consequences for their positions. And so that obviously you shouldn't kill someone for stealing your sandwich right after. I'm pretty sure Destiny I'm pretty sure Destiny said, am I misremembering this? Destiny absolutely said in his conversation with Big Joel that if somebody like steals a sandwich from you, that you should have a right to use lethal force to defend yourself. I'm almost positive that he said that. He might have said he wouldn't, but I think he said that you have a right to. He said he wouldn't because he couldn't afford, like, because he could afford to get another sandwich or something like that. That's my memory, but I mean, I don't feel like going back to the video and like watching it right now and breaking the flow of the segment. But if I'm wrong, then somebody should point that out later. Yeah. Big Joel has more deleted tweets where he theorized Destiny's position on this is based on wanting to kill somebody who fucked his wife. I think I know what you're referring to. That took place afterwards, I'm pretty sure. That whatever you're referring to right now, that took place after the comments that Destiny made about Big Joel being a subhuman. And after a person called, like, if I was Big Joel and I was called like a subhuman piece of shit, then I mean the gloves are off, right? Anyway, one way or another, that's the misinformation. My entire career has been about promoting and propagating the belief that truth is inherently valuable, because even if lying can buy you short-term gains, in the long term, it has devastating consequences to political movements. And I'm just not comfortable with it personally. Everybody engages in misinformation to some extent or another. Absolutely everybody. Literally everybody. Everybody. And so you need to respond to these things proportionally. Disproportionate response to these things has negative outcomes and is tantamount to misinformation itself. This is why I've said that Destiny fetishizes logical consistency and fetishizes factual accuracy. When somebody says that you fetishize trans women, they're not saying that you like trans women, or at least that's not all they're saying. They're saying that you have an unhealthy relationship with trans women, that your relationship to it is unhealthy or bad or destructive in some way. And that's the feeling that I have with Destiny. Fetishization of logical consistency. I'm not impugning him for liking logical consistency, which is a good thing, but fetishizing it, in this instance, I think has procured negative outcomes. And it allows him to continue a spiteful crusade against the online left, so severe that he has, at least for a time, deluded himself into believing the online left is even fucking remotely comparable to the online right with regards to the misinformation they propagate. Even if he walked that position back, I am sure he still holds it to some extent that I would find uncomfortable. He probably thinks, I don't know what, maybe the online left is 20% less riddled with misinformation. Destiny, wait, did Vaush actually unfollow me on Twitter over this? if I followed Destiny on Twitter, then all I would do is get into fights with him. But I generally don't like pouring gasoline on the fire, because another issue, this, by the way, this is the reason why Hassan detached from Destiny's community, because Destiny's community is a black hole. If you argue with them, they will misinterpret a position of yours, and they will spam it over and over and over again, and they'll dare you, they'll challenge you to respond to their misinterpretation, they'll challenge you to respond to their criticisms, and then you respond to that, and then they're like, oh, here we go, and then they do the same thing, and there's really no pullout if they don't like you. There's no end game to that. It's unfortunate, because I rather do like arguing, but it's very frustrating to me when I feel like none of my positions are being charitably interpreted by Destiny or his community. You know, that's my position on that. Does that make sense? We'll probably get in arguments more in the future, but it's just generally unproductive. So yeah, that's the T. Any final questions? Don't you think he might feel the same way about the communities? You mean my community? Yeah, I'm sure that he does. Though I have noticed there is a difference. Usually, like, my community just generally doesn't like Destiny after my conversation with Destiny, and I really can't blame them, because for all the positive shit that I've said about Destiny over the past 2 years, he does everything in his power when talking with me to undo whatever charitability I've given the audience to him. My audience was pretty favorable to Destiny after we did the duo debate. Like, I've put in the work on the PR team shit there, okay? But usually after I argue with Destiny, it's not that his community broadly dislikes me, it's that they, like, openly lie about a specific position that I have, which is frustrating. I guess you could say that's reciprocal, because I have seen people in my community who do the Destiny goes after teenage girls and Destiny abandoned his kid bullshit, which is like what the Nazis say about him. And I'd encourage you to not allow your criticisms to degrade to that level, because at that point you're like, you're at the level where, like, you don't like me, so you listen to the Nazis and you're like, Vaush is a pedophile, etc., etc. Like, that's not where the criticism should be coming from. Yeah, I guess you could make the argument that it's reciprocal, but he can engage with me to the extent that he feels comfortable. Vaush, I don't think your position on misinformation is consistent. Sure, explain how Mathman86 or face a ban. I think I just explained it pretty consistently, but go for it. I'm waiting. I'm awaiting the salient criticism to my position. Can I join Discord? Wait, I don't want to talk. No, just type. Never mind. No ban. You got too presumptive. Yeah. What was I saying? No, I think my position's pretty consistent. Yeah, it's fine with that. Vaush, cold take. I think his community is worse than him. Whatever. Not really important to me. Booksmarts equated Abigail being incorrect with lying too, and you missed it. No shade, but I think it shows an unconscious bias on his part. Yeah, sure. But if you're uncharitable to lefties, you will assume that they deliberately lie about economic positions. I've been in the online left community to know exactly why lefties tend to be wrong when they represent economic positions, or when they misrepresent those positions. It's not because they're deliberately lying. It's because they exist in circle jerks where certain, like, idioms or preconceived beliefs about capitalism run rampant, and they don't do enough research to undo or challenge any of those presuppositions. That doesn't mean it's not misinformation, but it's not the same as lying. I don't think I've ever met a lefty who, like, I caught on a lie when it came to economic positions. It's always like some unchecked internal bias on that subject, which doesn't make it okay, by the way, but that is different. That is different to lying. That is different. Okay, are we good? We do it? I think it's because leftist community has been highly aggressive towards him, and you're starting to experience the standard they put him in. For the past 2 years, no. For the past year and a half, I've gotten more shit from the online left than Destiny has. The only exception to that would have been the Rittenhouse stuff. But apart from that, I've absolutely attracted more general derision from the online left than Destiny's community has. Because Destiny, especially over the past year, has broadly pulled out of the aggressive online engagement that he used to engage in. But I would defend that. Yeah, it's certainly today, right now, I absolutely get more shit from the left. But me getting shit from the left isn't enough for me to justify dishonesty by distorting the extent to which the online left is dishonest, is misrepresentative, and is a threat to society. I'm not so much of like a beta male. to allow my feelings about the online left, which are deeply negative, to lead me to make statements like that. Why'd you say capitalism is inherently immoral when that's a big piece of Marxist critique? No, the term inherently there is doing a lot of work. Capitalism is a suboptimal way of organizing the way our society works. If I was a capitalist, I would also believe that our current iteration of capitalism is an inefficient or ineffective way of organizing how our society works. If by inherently immoral you mean the way in which our system operates is not maximizing human happiness, then sure. If you want to accuse a socialist for being a hypocrite because they say in one statement, business owners should pay their workers more, and then when they actually become a business owner, they don't, I think that's totally justified. But the criticisms that Marx levied at capitalism were not, anytime you're a business owner, you're immoral. Marx worked with Engels, for fuck's sake. He was a factory owner. He was an enormously wealthy man. Well, enormously. He was a wealthy man. The criticisms there are more nuanced. That wasn't good of him. Oh, you know what? You can go at a time. You know what? Then I never donate to me, because you're going to need every dollar you can save up to develop a time machine so you can go back in time and tell Engels he was being problematic, okay? All right, go. Zoom. Get back in there, okay? He's canceled. Good. You know what? Good. I want Engels to be canceled, so then people will stop bringing up that stupid fucking revolution is inherently authoritarian take. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. I hate that shit when ML's, you claim to be in favor of libertarianism, but I can't help but notice that you're comfortable with revolutionary conditions. Don't you know that revolutions are inherently authoritarian? Ah, okay. That was a miss. That was an L from Engels, you know? What are you going to do? What's my favorite book? I don't know. 1984. Go read it. Vaush, read On Authority by Engels. It's 2 pages. I have read On Authority. What do you think I'm referencing? Wait, what? What do you think I'm referencing right now? How would I know how to reference this without reading On Authority? I disagree with the premise. I just disagree. I don't think it's good theory. Unironically, I think the only purpose of On Authority in the modern day and age is to give authoritarian communists an excuse to justify their, like, counterproductive and outmoded beliefs. Isn't it kind of hypocritical on Destiny to complain about misinformation, then platform Kraut the next day after he spread the rumor of Shu dating a Nazi based on Fortran screenshots? I think that I think that Kraut still thinks that Shu dated that Nazi, even though it's been debunked and disproven to the furthest possible extent, and it was only ever based on 4chan screenshots. I think I heard that he still believes that, but I genuinely don't know. I don't think that guy's playing with the full deck, so I have no idea. Like, day 1, day 2, I don't know. Yeah. Okay, are we good? Can we pull out of this shit, please? Can we find an end? This nonsensical fucking segment. Jesus Christ. I feel like I'm milking this, but to be fair, Destiny's community's made 4 videos on this, so this is going to be my 3rd, but we're done here, okay? We're gonna pull out while we're ahead, okay? Yeah. The relentless engagement with that community probably... relentless engagement with uncharitable communities generally brings nothing but suffering, you know?